turned on. This is what happens when I don't have Drew with me. Stuff doesn't work right. Well, hey guys, I want to jump in here, do a little live discussion, maybe interact with you some, share my viewpoints for what they're worth on who exactly is conspiring, which is a crime if we use the word conspiracy. A conspiracy is a crime. But who is actually trying to take our gun rights away? Is it them? Is it they? Is it those? I want to dig into that a little bit. Many of you have probably seen things going around the internet right now. Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear has shared some stuff. So have a handful of people about a reporter doing an article, a reporter who's from Bloomberg-owned media, looking for people like me, people like you, people like Mike and others to become poster childs, the face of crazy, of the people that they can pin a face on, or rather pin that face on the media saying, look, these are the radicalized idiots that are storming the Capitol, that are tearing up our cities, that are trying to inflict harm on our nation. First of all, how many of you have read the U.S. Constitution? Hello, Malta. Hello, Austin. How many of you have read the Declaration of Independence? This is the original text right here of the U.S. Constitution before all of the amendments. In this is the Bill of Rights, which is about that thick. A lot of text has been added over the years for good reasons. Federalist Papers is good stuff. The book's right behind me. As well as, if you're going to read the Federalist Papers, do read the Anti-Federalist Papers. But let's talk about this. Seeing a lot of people talking about the media this very day on Facebook thread. Hey, Corpus Christi, I am well, thank you. On this very day, a Facebook thread from a person that's smart and knows what's up. They're talking about how hard it is for us to get our point out because the media is owned by the liberal left. So what? They're talking about how they are conspiring to strip our rights away. So what? Whatever in the history of our nation told you that it was illegal or unconstitutional for somebody that's a member of this republic to try to change the Constitution? See, we think that because these words were written here, they can't be changed. Well, they have been changed many times. The Emancipation Proclamation, the amendment that came thereafter, freeing the slaves. The fact that women can vote is a change to the Constitution. The reason I tell you this is we spend time playing marbles. I'm not even going to say checkers. We're playing frickin' marbles in the street, and there are well-organized people playing 4D chess, playing high-level strategic chess against your rights. All the while, we have people wanting to pound their chest on the internet talking about, woe is me. They don't give me a fair shot. I'm going to build an argument here, and I'm going to wrap it around a couple of thoughts. So I'm seeing a lot of conservatives, pro-Second Amendment, pro-liberty lovers, talking about how the left is stopping people like us from getting our message out. Well, who owes you access to social media? I'm grateful that YouTube was created. I'm grateful that I have this platform, but nobody owes me access to this platform. Nobody owes me access to Facebook or any of those other platforms. But wait, if those people get access, shouldn't I? That's fair. If those people get to have their voice, shouldn't I? That's fair. Well, isn't that really the very basis of what so many of us in this genre of society are fighting against? Socialism, communism, right? Free thought being stripped away. Here's a thought. Liberty is not a document. Liberty is not a inscription on stone. Liberty is not a bell in Philadelphia. Liberty is not the words of the founders. Liberty is a concept, and liberty begins and ends right there. Right there. I need to come closer. Right there. Right there. It begins and ends inside of you, nowhere else. I have sadly seen the decay of those who proclaim to protect and love liberty. Now look, not everybody is going to talk on the internet like I am now. Not everybody's going to visit their state or federal capital. Not everybody is going to get deeply involved in politics. And there's the problem. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you if you so care for this country? Is there a passage maybe from one of our founders that fits the bill for my point? Maybe this has been looked at before. These are the times that try men's souls. I've read you guys these words from Mr. Payne before the crisis. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, oh, he will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. God, that's our country right now. We have all been given so much. So much. We have access to clean water. Garbage is picked up. We have access to electricity that flows to the house. We don't really want for anything. Even if we're poor, we can go somewhere and get something to eat usually. Yes, there are many starving people in this country. I'm not suggesting for a minute that everybody has everything that they need, but it is so easy now for our basic needs, food, shelter, right? Clothing, security. It is so easy for those needs to be met if we do our part. Whose responsibility is it to give us those basic needs? And herein lies the eternal difference in ideologies. Government should give us that. The individual should give us that. That is the very difference. I don't think any one of us, I can't speak for all of you, I would never want somebody to go hungry or without if there is something that can be done. But liberty begins within, and there is no liberty if you live under the thumb of tyranny. Tyranny like hell is not easily conquered, says Mr. Payne. Yet we have this consolation with us that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Let's see what dearness, what the definition meant at that time. I love having the computer accessible here. The quality possessed by something with a great price or value, costliness, preciousness, expensiveness. Do we not have great value? Do we not hold our liberty in great value? I don't think that we do. And here's why I don't think that we do. If you judge a person by their actions, by their deeds, by their outward acts to the world, it's pretty easy to see what's going on inside of them. Words are cheap. Words are easy. You know, when Payne wrote this, there was only a few that were fighting for liberty. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only. Dearness, value, costliness, preciousness that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods. And it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Is it not highly rated to us? Do we look at it with disdain? Do we look at it like the food that we toss in the garbage? Do we look at it like the water that we let roll down the drain? Do we look at it like the time that we let slip through our fingers with family and loved ones, worrying about tomorrow, not being in the present? Because that is what liberty is. It is enjoying now. Yet we continue to try to find fault with everybody. This is not where I wanted this conversation to go, but this is where it's going. Somebody said to me, I only have a voice now because of censorship where I can just speak to individuals. What greater way is there to communicate than to an individual? What greater way? So right now, I get to talk. I can't read all your comments immediately. I can't respond to them. So this is not the best form of communication. But if you, whoever you are, the individual, and I were sitting across the podcast table here, and we got to interact just one-on-one, it would be a different conversation, right? You'd tell me your viewpoint, I'd tell you mine. Maybe we'd agree, maybe we'd disagree, and we'd continue. What better form of communication is there? Well, I only can talk to one. Well, good. That means that you can teach your kids. It means that you can teach the young people around you. It means that you can interact with your neighbors one-on-one. A mom to a daughter, a father to a son, a preacher to his parishioners, a teacher to their pupil, a boss to his or her employee, right? A manager to the people under him. What better way is there? Let's see one of these comments here. The more laws made, the more freedoms taken. Not necessarily. Tyranny has already taken over. They have us fighting each other. So here, Michael, I want to comment on this. I want to read this to everybody in case you didn't see it. Michael Royer says, tyranny already has taken over. They have us fighting each other. They have Democrats and Republicans fighting each other when the actual leaders of the party are on the same side. Okay, that right there, I don't care if you're right or wrong. And here's why. It's not the point. And this is the challenge. I pose questions and this is how people respond. Here's the problem. You know what the problem is? Let me tell you what the problem is. Let me identify for you how frickin' screwed we are. Let me identify how the things have gone down the toilet. Let me identify how we effed up. I don't want to hear any of that. What I would like to hear is, what's the goal? How do we get there? How do we quantify some steps to achieve that goal? And then how can I take action right now? So for years, I've talked with you guys about elections. And you know what I hear from people? It's all rigged. It's not all rigged. And I don't want to hear a bunch of conspiracy nonsense here. There are election frauds. There always have been. There always will be. Anytime that you have a human involved or any animal, you are going to see people prey on others. But if people truly valued their vote, so a minute ago somebody said most people value security. I don't think that they do, because if most people did, they would do things that proved that out. Your point was people are choosing security over freedom. Let's talk about that completely misquoted bit of history. So that bit of, and I've read this so much to people, it's funny. This right here is a side note, but I want to go down it. It completely lost its context. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety. That's often paraphrased to those that would give up one doesn't deserve either. That quote had nothing to do with what we're talking about. And I'm going to go on and tell you why. This bit of information that old Benjamin Franklin was talking about was a letter that he was writing to somebody. I'm going to pull this bit of text for you so that you guys can hear it exactly. And it's good information. It's good information. because we recite things and we think that we understand a thing, but we don't, when we don't go do the real work to look it up. The Hoover Institute actually did a good article on it, hoover.org. I like studying history. I like looking at facts rather than repeating bull crap. So what he was literally talking about at the time was, I just wanted to make sure I had it correct. What he was actually looking at the time was a group literally spending money to purchase protection, to purchase hired protection. And this has been, it's very easy to cherry pick stuff. Didn't vote for Obama. Don't hate Obama, but I didn't vote for him. But somebody sent me something the other day on a particular thread showing Obama saying that voters were stupid and ignorant. And it was literally a clip of Obama saying people were stupid and ignorant. Well, if you look at the whole speech or watch the whole speech, he didn't say that at all. But somebody chopped it and said, here's what Obama said. We can't just cherry pick bits of information. There are a lot of people that want security, and that's quite all right. That's always been that way. You know, the truth is, most Second Amendment people prefer safety, security, over going out and fighting for liberty. Now, look, here's the point I want to make. Here's where I want to take this conversation to. Nobody owes you your rights. I have this discussion often. People say that the rights enshrined here in the Bill of Rights are God-given. Sure. Okay, let's go with that. I like that. They're God-given rights. Any law that we have codified as man, just think about it this simply. These are house rules. House rules that we collectively as a society sit down and make. So that is our interpretation of what laws should be and what rights should be. While these men that wrote these amendments put these together, it's pretty good that some of them changed, because at the time that this was drafted, if you had a lot of color in your skin, a lot of melanin, guess what? You weren't even considered a person. You were considered a partial person, property. If you were a slave and you had children, your children were not considered children. They were things. They were chattel. They were like farm animals to be traded and sold. That was codified in the Constitution. I love the Constitution. I love our history, good and bad, because it brought us to this place. But I'm not going to look at this through a blurred looking glass, through a distorted set of spectacles that don't let me see truth. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's pretty cool. You know, what that was all about was, if you again study the history of our country at the time, England had a national religion. That was what they were trying to stop. They were trying to stop organized religion mixing with government, where government had to say you had to be Methodist or you had to be Baptist or you had to be Buddhist or anything like that. That's all they're saying. Or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Very important, that First Amendment, and the reason being, at the time, the printing press was a fairly new thing to the world. Even though it had been around for some time, you didn't just type something on your phone and spit it out to the world. Now, this is analogous to the First Amendment in the sense of, at that point in time, to print something, especially in England, if you printed something, it was taxed. So they were taxed by printing paper documents. That was literally Congress's way of saying, like, you're not going to get in our ability to communicate. Reading this, Thomas Paine's The Crisis, this was broadcast throughout the colonies. Thomas Paine's, in his words, stirred the hearts of men and women to actually take up arms and fight, to do the dirty work of liberty. If that was impossible for them to pass that around, it would have been a big deal. Our First Amendment is very important. Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Challenge you to do this. Take that Second Amendment text, do some research on the writings of men like John Locke, understand where and why our founders drafted the words there like they did. John Locke was influential in the writings of men like Jefferson. You know, you start looking through, does you guys know what the Third Amendment is? No soldier shall in a time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. That's pretty open-ended. Pretty open-ended there. Amendment 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be seized and the persons or things to be seized. There's a really specific thing about the Fourth Amendment that's important. It all hinges on the honor of the oath of the person swearing out the warrant against you. Why this is important is who puts that person in office? The judge. You do. And this is why local elections are so important. This is stuff I've talked about for years, but folks don't want to talk about because the dirty day-to-day work of liberty isn't fun. The person that swears out that oath, you want them to think like you. You want them to have a similar worldview as you. That doesn't mean that they have to agree with you on everything, but you want them to have a similar worldview. That's why state's attorneys and judges in sheriff elections are so very important. Supported by oath or affirmation. That means that the judge, the state's attorney, the police officer that goes and signs that paperwork, that gives and hands it off to the judge, you want honorable, good people that have a similar worldview. Fifth, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentation or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, blah, 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 blah. This goes on. This is right, the right not to incriminate yourself, right? The right to shut up and wait to get a counsel to support you. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I want to challenge you to dig in and start to understand this stuff. Then, here's the next thing. Don't just blow facts at people. Start to understand why it is important for us to be involved on a daily basis, not just at voting time a couple times a year, a couple times every few years. I only vote in presidential elections, the rest don't matter. Bull crap, they don't. I mean, literally, most of the taxes that we pay, property tax wise, is all local stuff. It's not from the state. It's school boards and in cities and road districts and all that stuff. That's all local stuff. Those people that run for office locally become state reps, state senators, bigger levels of office, and those people eventually work their way up the food chain and make their way to Washington. Much a lot of them do. Coffee break. The conspiracy here is a self-induced one. Check this out. Owning a gun, shooting a gun, that's not an expression of liberty. That's a hobby. That's an expression of a hobby. To have a firearm and to use it for its intended purpose is not a right. What are you saying? To have a firearm and use it for its intended purpose is not a right. I mean, that's just like a law of nature. Any living creature seeks to defend itself to live. From a single-cell organism up to complex creatures like us, we seek to live. We seek to continue to breathe. Hold an animal or see an animal go underwater, it's going to fight to get back to the air. The concept is there whether we codify it in paper or not. The problem is, as we sit idly by, that's what it is. Chatting with the people that think like you doesn't change anything, right? Getting angry, because that's what I'm seeing now. I've sat here and I voted and I did my stuff, but that's what I'm hearing from people. I'm hearing temper tantrums from folks that really didn't do a lot. Now, if you went to war, served your country, that's commendable. It's awesome. It's honorable. Thank you. That's not what I'm talking about. That is a completely different bit of liberty protection. To protect our Constitution here on this soil is a constant education process. And when I talked about playing marbles in the street versus that 4D chess game, that is the difference. See, we need to begin to educate people on things like personal responsibility. I'm seeing so many people on all sides that have completely removed themselves from the notion of responsibility, being responsible for the world around them. Well, I'm not taking responsibility for that. I didn't do it. You did do it by your inaction. I look at my community and there are things that I know I could change. There are things I'm not willing to change. There's things I am willing to change. I'm not going to spend my entire life, and there's people that do 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day working to affect change in their community. Because there are people that do that, that is why we must be vigilant. There are organizations with people that every waking moment they are working to strip you of liberty. There are people, I'm going to say it again, every waking moment that are working to strip you of liberty. There are people every waking moment working to strip you of liberty. And it's their right. It is their right to do that. How so? Okay, let's go back to the old Constitution here, huh? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Guess what? We're the posterity. We do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Okay, so, we start to go into Article 1, Section 1, 2, 3, and I challenge you to read this stuff. But as you start to go through this and you realize we created Congress. We created Congress. Congress is not leaders. Congress is representatives. You don't believe me? Well, here we go. The House of Representatives, that's half of Congress, shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people, capital of several states. Now, at that point, there wasn't that many. And the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. No person shall be a representative, and it goes on here to talk about the stipulations for being a representative. Literally, the Constitution is drafted so that at any time the people can ratify it. They can change it. They can talk about it. They can discuss it. And here's the cool thing about being a human, being at the top of the food chain, having this amazing rational brain of ours, that it can be applied to any end. I mean, the fact that somebody created a communication device, I'm on my phone right now, and there is a wireless microphone going to the phone. There's a light that uses LED technology. There's freaking green LEDs back there. All of these things that we created, they're amazing. Our brains can be harnessed and used to do all kinds of awesome stuff, if we so choose. Put a little more light on me here. If we so choose, but we don't have to choose. And that's the thing. Choice, responsibility, conscious choice leads to action. It also leads to inaction. I will do nothing. I will do something. Both of those are taking responsibility. Something can be whatever you want it to be, and people have a right to try to change our Constitution. That said, before you waste any energy telling me about the Bill of Rights, doesn't mean you have to like it. It is your job to create the kind of republic that you want. We are not a democracy. We are a republic that uses the democratic voting process. I challenge you to research the difference between a republic and a democracy. Well, hell, why don't we just talk about it? I'm not the greatest typer. Can you hear that? There's a great article I had stored here from, I believe it's from Hillsdale College. Stand by. This is from the Heritage Foundation, which, by the way, is where these booklets come from, Bill of Rights and the the Constitution and the Declaration that I have down here. America is a republic and not a pure democracy. The contemporary efforts to weaken our Republican customs and institutions in the name of greater equality thus runs against the effort by America's founders to defend our country from the potential excess of democratic majorities. American republicanism and the ordered liberty it makes possible are grounded in the Federalist recognition that non-majoritarian parts of the community make legitimate contributions in the hallmark of political justice. But the careful balance produced by our mixed republic is threatened by an egalitarianism that undermines the social, familial, religious, and economic distinctions and inequalities that undergird our political liberty. Preserving the Republican freedoms we cherish requires tempering egalitarian zeal and moderating the hope for a perfectly just democracy. Let's continue. Now you may wonder, well, what the hell is egalitarian? Why don't we pull that up too? Man, it's amazing that we've got these devices that we can just look up whatever we want, right? Pretty crazy, but I'm going to do it. Because I think, this is how we learn. This is how we grow. Egalitarianism is a trend of thought in political philosophy, and an egalitarian favors equality of some sort. People should get the same or be treated the same or be treated as equals in some respect. That sounds really nice. But I will not be penalized if I spent my summer in the garden and you did not spend your summer in yours. The garden, in this sense, is our life, right? You choose how to spend your time. You choose how to direct your thoughts, and thoughts are things. Our thoughts become our actions. Our thoughts create the world that is around us. Nothing that we have didn't first start as thought. Even your offspring, right? You saw your wife or your husband and said, hey, I'd like to, and next thing you know, 9 months later, you got a kid. Thought. Pardon me, drinking here. But as we're talking about this concept of understanding where we came from, it should start to change the narrative because you begin to understand how this works. There isn't some veil hiding things. There is only work. There are those that apply action and those that don't. And the harder that you direct action to a specific end, the closer you'll get to it. If the people that created cell phones said this is too hard, we just can't do it, the cell phone wouldn't have created itself. If the founders didn't sit down and say we need this republic to exist and it will be hard. It took a decade to really start to see some stuff. But then it was a decade before that guys were sitting around talking, gals were sitting around talking, putting thought into words. Words became ideas, ideas became concepts, concepts became plans, and then somebody at some point applied action. We've got way too many people that feel that putting a gun in your pocket or owning a gun is somehow an expression of liberty. You're looking at it all wrong, man. We live in the freest and most wonderful nation in the world, and when we spend all of our time trying to find the faults, trying to find out who did the bad thing or who's trying to ramrod us, you know what you're not doing? You're not creating forward motion. You're not creating progress. There's always going to be a yin and yang, a dark and light, maybe not even a right or wrong. There will always be a bitter and a sweet. That's just the way it is. Yet for some reason, people, and it's on both sides, conservative-minded people, liberal-minded people. I'm more of a libertarian. Do whatever the fuck you want. Just don't hurt kids and don't make me pay for it. I mean, literally, I don't care what you do. Don't tax me for your problems and don't hurt children or anybody. Other than that, I really don't care what you do. You may not like that, but that's kind of how I think. As soon as you here's the challenge though, hurt. Well, now we're starting to talk about emotions. Emotions are tied to ethics. Emotions are tied to morals. Emotions are tied to one's religious viewpoints. These concepts become broader because it's too easy for us just to say, yeah, if they do wrong, then it's not good. Well, what's wrong? Now, right and wrong are directly tied to one's personal belief system. Personal belief systems come from how you and I train our kids. That's what culture is. So our culture right now, we have a lot of people that don't like where our culture is. Well, who raised all these people? Who passed on and influenced them in their youth? The same thing happened in the past. I mean, look at the 60s in our country. This is why I love history. Now, I'm really, really happy that at some point in time, some people said, you know what? I don't think owning other people and making them toil in the fields is okay. Now, this pisses people off, but that wasn't why the Civil War was fought. It became part of it, but that wasn't why the Civil War was fought. Civil War was fought over rights, freedom. It was fought because some people in one part of the world said, we don't want government telling us what to do. One of those things happened to be owning people. All of that came back to greed, to money. Oh, I can really make a nice plantation and a nice life for myself if I can get free labor. Caveat to that, oh, those southern slaveholders were terrible. Where the hell do you think all that cotton got sent? Yeah, right up the rivers to the north, to the textile mills in New York, in Ohio, in Chicago. Where do you think all that tobacco went? It went all over the north. Complacent and complicit in the ownership of people. Look the other way. And that is exactly what's happening now. You're not hurting me directly. I'm not directly seeing anything bad happening, so I'm just going to go about my life. Shit, now you're doing things that hurt me. Now I'm angry. And that's what's happened right now. For years, things kind of were pretty even keel. People were able to go about their lives and do what they wanted in the way that they wanted to, for the most part. I again challenge you. I did a whole piece on the history of gun rights a while ago. You're not going to like what you see, but the notion that all of the gun laws that we have now are new, nope, not new at all. The founders had bans on carrying concealed weapons as far back as the colonies. True story. So that being said, I challenge you to go back and dig through that stuff because it kind of tells us where we're at today. It also tells us how we got there and how we can get wherever it is you want to go. But again, therein lies the issue. Do you know where you want to go? Do you see it? I tell you one thing, talking about what my opposition is doing doesn't get me anywhere. Talking about what my competition in business is doing doesn't help me get sales. Talking about what my competitor on the field is doing doesn't help me get faster, stronger, better. Talking about what is helping the people that I'm fighting against, ideology-wise, not physically. In a sense, there is some truisms there, but the reason that this rift is now here is because we can't communicate. All we can do is say, you know what the problem is? I don't care what you think the problem is. I want to know what the solution is. And I do believe that starts with a few things. Here they are. One, actually caring about people. Even if I don't agree with you, I care about you. You're a mom, you're a dad, you're a brother, you're a sister, you're a neighbor, you're somebody's lover. You're a human. It doesn't mean I have to agree with everything you say. In fact, I may outright hate some of the things that you agree with or rather think about. I might not agree with them. But I don't hate you. Unless the things that you, let me rephrase that. I don't hate anybody, nor do I ever wish to. What I hate? Causing injury to people and depriving them of their rights because you feel your viewpoint is more important. It's not. Somebody that wants to strip us of our Second Amendment rights or First Amendment rights is literally saying their opinion is more important or more valid than ours. Well, newsflash. Anybody that wants to strip or limit us of our Second Amendment rights, their opinion, if they're an American citizen, so if you're watching this and you're not a U.S. citizen, no offense, I don't care what your viewpoints are on it because you don't live here or support our country financially. I do care about you and wherever you're at, though. We, the people, do have a right to an opinion. We, the people, do not get to tread on the rights of others. We are on a slippery slope now, a slope that's existed for all of time, though. I kind of envision it right now. I told this analogy on Instagram the other day in a live feed. If our world is a garden, right? We were handed a pretty sweet garden. Before gardens get planted, somebody's got to pull the weeds. They've got to tear the bushes out. They've got to pull the sod out. They've got to cut trees down. And they've got to make a flat plate of earth, right? They've got to put amendments into the soil, mulch and compost and things that are going to be good for whatever crop you're growing. If our nation was a garden, we were handed a pretty good garden. Not perfect, but here's the thing about a garden. No garden, if you stop tending it, does it keep growing. I mean, literally in the summertime here, we've got a garden. If I go out of town and nobody is in that garden for a couple days, weeds grow. If it's not raining and it's sunny and dry out, things dry up and die. Somebody has to tend to it. If you have livestock and you're not protecting them from wolves and foxes and other predators, if you're not feeding them, getting them good vet care, etc., giving them shelter, they're not going to produce for you. As a kid, we had a chicken coop that I built, and it became Fort Knox because our chicken coop, previous to this one, got raided by ferrets, by minks, by raccoons, by owls. Well, the owls usually would get them when they were outside. So I built one, and then I became the nighttime sniper of varmints that were trying to kill our stuff. If I didn't do those things, all the chickens would have been dead. No more eggs, no more fresh meat. This garden that we were handed, this garden that is our republic, requires the constant attention of its gardeners. The gardeners are us, the members of this republic. I am not a subject. I am not an employee. I am not a person that is told what to do by Congress. I am a person that lives in a republic where you and I create the rules. All Congress does is write them down. We have lost the idea of responsibility in telling those people that very thing. They don't work for us. They represent us. We happen to pay them a salary. We change all those rules in a second if we choose to. So right now we've got a really messed up garden. Trees have grown up, bushes, weeds. There are wolves and predators of every kind in the garden. And there's a bunch of people, a lot of Second Amendment kind of conservative folks. And what they want to do, they want to toss dynamite and hand grenades into the garden. We're going to just blow all them weeds out. We're going to blow all them trees out. We're just going to toss some shit out in there and blow it up. Because it's easy. It's easy for me to light a match and toss a stick of dynamite. It's easy for me to pull a pin and toss it. What's not easy is for me to go toil under the sun and get my hands cut up doing the work. It's easy for me to negate and shrink from my duties as a member of the Republic for years. And then when all of a sudden my rights are challenged, now I want to throw sticks of dynamite. That is exactly what's happening right now. People hear me say this and they go, but you know what the problem is? I don't care. There is work to be done, and that work requires the members of the Republic to do their job, to protect and promote and proliferate liberty, not to spout on. Part of liberty, though, is it is a double-edged sword. This side might be your side. That side might be your opposition. But if you get liberty, so do they. There is another big issue we have. People on both sides forget. Liberty doesn't work if I have to agree with your way of thinking. I'm not a bigot, as long as you agree with me. I'm not closed-minded as long as you agree with me. I'm totally open-minded as long as everything that you say is, not a challenge to my viewpoint. That's not how liberty works. The whole point of liberty and the whole point of having it to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. The blessings of liberty is creating this garden where you and I are free to go work, to toil, to do our thing. Our founders left us a place that we could create the life that we want for our families, for ourselves if we choose to live alone. It wasn't to hand us a life. It wasn't to say, here is how you must live. It was to say, here is a place that there are parameters which you will live inside of, meaning you're not going to cheat, steal, lie, rob your neighbors, etc. So those are the rules that we together as society choose to say, hey, here's my property line. If you don't like it, I'm going to, have the right to defend myself if you come in here and try to hurt me. Liberty's a mess. It always has been, though, because, man, that is us. You guys ever read any Socrates and his thoughts on democracy and voting? Check it out. Socrates, Socrates, he was put to death, Socrates, because of his criticism of democracy. They said that he was stirring up the young people there in Athens, creating some havoc, so they put him to death. Did you know that? Did you know that that's why they killed him? The year in which Socrates was prosecuted, 399, that's a long time ago, was one in which several other prominent figures were brought to trial in Athens on the charge of, what charge is that? Impiety. That it is unlikely to have been a coincidence. Rather, it suggests that there was at the time a sense of anxiety about the dangers of religious unorthodoxy and about political consequences. Blah, 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 blah. You can read about this yourself. But I want you to understand what he was thinking. And I want you to, if you're going to read about this, you dig a little bit deeper. And what you'll find out, a lot of the things that our founders thought about came down the line from one philosopher to the next. And they agreed somewhat. I'm pulling up the right paragraph. Modern society has been established on the democratic ideals where every person has a say in government through a vote that determines the ruling party. The idea of Western democracy comes from ancient Greek democracy practiced in the time of Socrates. However, Socrates wasn't much of a fan. In fact, one could argue that he even hated the system of governance. Well, wait, why would he hate democracy? The dialogues of Plato described an incident in which Socrates tries to explain the flaws of democracy to a person. I'm not going to try to say his name. Yeah, I will. Adiamantus? I don't know how to say it, but that's what I said. He compares the society to a ship, and he asks Adiamantus, if he were to head out on a journey by sea, who would he want to be in charge of the ship? Just anyone, or a person who is properly educated in the skills and rules of seafaring? Adiamantus obviously replies that he wants an educated seafarer to captain the ship. Socrates asks, why then would you want any random person to judge who would rule the country? What he was trying to say is that voting in an election is a skill. And like any other skill, only those who've been systematically taught should have the right to vote. Allowing citizens to vote without properly educating them is like putting them in charge of a ship in a storm. Socrates proposed a regime where only those who are educated about ruling are given absolute power. By absolute power, he's talking about the vote. He isn't the only Greek philosopher to criticize democracy. Plato stated in the Republic that democracy is just a latter stage of a declining state, which is where we are now. We're in a declining state because we have given over to this idea that everybody gets a voice. Don't for a second mistake that I don't believe everybody has the right to the voice. But just because you live here, you have a duty. You and I have a duty to educate ourselves on this process of governance, this process of self-governance. We have a duty to not just cast a ballot frivolously like tossing a stone in a pond. We have a duty to understand that there are ramifications for our actions. Donald Trump became president because people were sick of the process. Donald Trump is not president because people were sick of the process. You may have a bunch of conjecture to add at this point, but I'm trying to talk in big picture theory here for us just to get the work done and get to the point. Plato theorized that democracies would eventually become so bad that the people themselves would demand a dictator come and save them. Ooh, isn't that kind of like what happened with Donald Trump? Maybe a little bit. Everything's so bad, we need somebody to come and restore our dignity. I don't need anybody to give me dignity. There's nobody gives me honor. Nobody gives you your dignity, and nobody gives you your honor. Nobody gives you respect for your country. That is something that you harbor inside, which is why I started this with liberty resides here. Nobody sitting in Washington tells me how I view this republic. Nobody sitting in Washington or in my state capital tells me how I teach my children or the things that I push out into the world. So too is it for you. Aristotle, another Greek philosopher, was objected to democracy. The main reason why Aristotle disliked democracy was it risked overturning the rule of law by imposing the will of the majority. There is a reason, I'm going to come back to Aristotle. There is a reason at this time in history when our founders were alive, there was a term, learned. A person went to university and they became learned. They studied the Greek philosophers. They studied these concepts. So we may have new devices. We may have things like electric lights and airplanes and really cool gunfighter, gun oil, gun grease. Little shameless plug. My channel, my grease, I can do that. Liberty. These things might not have existed then, but the concepts were still how humans interacted together. Did you hear what I just told you about Aristotle? I mean, that's pretty earth-shattering. The main reason why Aristotle disliked democracy was that it risked overturning the rule of law by imposing the will of the majority. Which means that you can have a majority of people march through city streets, tearing down statues, burning buildings, robbing businesses of their goods, destroying people's lives and homes. But the laws don't mean a thing because the mob says so. You may have people telling you how to think, how to be, and if enough people say it, the laws don't mean a thing. That is the problem with democracy, and that is why our founders created a republic. The individual is sovereign. The organization of government protects that sovereign individual's right to think, to worship, to live, to travel, to be. But if you and I don't protect, promote, and proliferate that republic, it will disappear. And again, it begins here. That's a mindset. And that's what I'm talking about. A mindset is not a t-shirt. Today I've got my friends from Alpha Munitions shirt on. It's a great shirt. It bears the flag of liberty. By the way, Alpha Munitions produces the finest rifle brass under the sun, period. Speaking of Greek. It's not a logo on a t-shirt. It's not, some thing. It's not an image. It's not even codified words. That's not what a mindset is. A mindset is your dominating thoughts that create the reality that you have. It's your habits, and those habits begin with thought. Liberty is a mindset, and your ability to protect and promote it begins most importantly with your ability to communicate with others. When you lose the ability to communicate, you lost your ability to walk through that garden and do your job. If you've never had the ability to communicate, work on it. Listen, hey, I don't understand what you're saying, but would you talk to me? Would you tell me what you mean? Would you tell me what you're thinking about? And then I'm going to shut up and I'm going to try to listen. Oh, it might make me angry, but why is it making me angry? Because you don't agree with me? Because if you're right and I'm wrong, then it's scary. Because if you get your way, then my life will change. Nothing is owed to you. Nothing is owed to any one of us. The spark of life ignited in you, and you're here. I'm here, and it's pretty freaking fantastic. And we're here really at one of the most exciting times in history. We live longer. We have less to worry about. Literally, we go out and exercise because our lives are so relaxed. We're not having to drag wood in all day long. We're not plowing up fields with ox. We are so relaxed that we have to pretend to do work, i.e. exercise, to just stay healthy so we can live. Think about that. We are so blessed that I have to go swim in a pool or pick up weights just to simulate what I'm supposed to be doing. Now I'm talking to a freaking camera sitting on my ass for an hour. I better go do some push-ups when I'm done. That mindset thing is very important. It does dictate how you begin to view things. It dictates the color of your lenses, right? You know, you got different sunglasses. Some of them are polarized, some of them are not. Maybe one's a dark lens, one's an orange lens, one's a yellow lens. They change the way you see things. Your mindset changes the way that you see the world in front of you. Your mindset changes the way that you interact. It changes the way you communicate. What if you cultivated a mindset that helped you communicate more effectively? What if you cultivated a mindset that allowed you to hear people for what they were trying to say? What if your mindset cultivated and created a reality for you that allowed you to live more at peace with others? For those of you Christians, I believe it was the Apostle Paul that said, as much as possible, do your best to live at peace with all men. As a pastor's kid, these things are burned into my brain. Whether you agree with the Bible or not, I think Paul's point is super. As much as possible, do your best to live at peace with all men. As much as possible. I'm not going to turn the other cheek after you break these teeth out to let you break these teeth out. I've got family to take care of and mouths to feed. Enough is enough of the nonsense, of the wasted time, of the noise. There is a garden out there that is our republic, and it requires you and I to get out there together, to laugh, to joke, maybe have a couple beers, and pull some weeds. It requires us to care. You know, you might not like rutabagas, but somebody else does, and they may have planted some rutabagas in that garden, and it's their right to do that. You might not like beets. I love beets. If you come and try to start pulling my beets, I'm going to elbow strike you because I don't want you to take my beets. I like the beets. That's an analogy. It's a part of that garden analogy. If all you liked was corn and we just had, your garden looked like the state of Illinois or Iowa and it was just corn as far as the eye could see, what about all the people that like green beans or grapes or apples or peppers or beans or whatever? What about them? Did they not get a choice? And that is exactly what I'm saying. Some of you might say, this is stupid. It's not the same thing. We're not talking about food. It is all the same thing. It's about personal choices. Nobody's making you eat the things that you don't want to eat. You know, so when we comment on, oh, the food industry's killing us, really? Did you not choose what food to eat? Did you not choose? I mean, you could have grown a garden. Even if you live in the city, there's community gardens in almost every city now that you can grow plots of food in. Do you choose the home you live in? If you don't like where you're at, is there like a law stopping you from going elsewhere? Maybe you want to sell everything you own and live in the back of a van like people are doing now. Choices. Nobody's making you read the things that you read. Nobody's making you do the things that you're doing. Nobody's causing your heart to be filled with anxiety and fear other than you. You might blame the media for that, but you or we are the ones listening, watching, viewing, consuming, stewing on. Liberty starts here, which means that if you free yourself from the shackles that we, the people, have tied ourselves up with, what are you going to spend all that free time thinking about? The garden that you're going to grow this summer coming up, maybe? Perhaps the exercise you're going to do to make yourself fit, because what is the point of liberty if you die young? Perhaps the text that you are going to read, perhaps the things that you are going to research from Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. Maybe then the mindset will change some. That's all I got. There is a conspiracy out there, and they are trying to take our guns away. There are people that would wish for none of us to have the right to defend ourselves, because then their rule of law, not the rule of law, can be enforced. I'm not going to let that happen. But not through force, through logic, through reason, through communication, through the legislative process, through the electoral process. We screwed up really big time in these elections because we're not communicating. The fact that the two people that we had as presidential hopefuls were the only ones that we had says a lot about our ability to lead each other. Leaders need to come forth and do their job. Violence is not the answer here. Compassion, love, understanding, peace, and starting that little firestorm of liberty inside of you so that you appreciate the life that you have and what proliferates, protects, and allows it to continue. I know there's going to be lots of comments here from people telling me your deep state conspiracies. I've lived it too long. I've watched how this works too long. I've been involved in the inner workings of government, in elections, in these processes. I have done it enough and inserted myself into it, not a pat on the back, but in spite of myself. If I can, you can. If I can, you can. Work begets more work. Success begets more success, and belief begets more of the same. Believe in yourself. Understand that the spark of liberty that I do truly believe, science doesn't bear this, but I think it maybe is something that science does not see or understand. Those of us that were born and live here on the soil, those of us that came here for the reasons that this nation was created, have something different in us. Live like it. Live and bear that out in your life. Let the actions of your life show it. Don't just say it. Don't type the shit on Facebook and in comment sections. Live it. Live the liberty that you were handed. Don't squander it. Don't waste it. Dig it, man. That's all I got. Don't be dickheads. Be well. How do I shut this sucker off? I don't know. Peace.